Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. Later on we'll have a look in detail at Easter. That'll be this evening on the Easter updates page. This is going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. It looks like we're going to be having some chilly weather coming up next week. Winds are going to try and get into the north, but how much of a northerly influence we get next week, we're a little bit uncertain about it. But this week we're dominating high pressure. Next week I think we're going to pull out that high pressure a little bit down to the south and the west. But I'll show you the detail on that in a second. Also later on today we'll have Terry Scully's mid-March to mid-April forecast covering the full month ahead as well, so you'll be able to see that probably around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon, and then the Easter update will be around 7. So a lot going on at the website today. A lot going on tomorrow, because I'm going to have a bit of an announcement tomorrow about an exciting development that's coming up over the weekend. So you'll be able to hear what that's all about tomorrow at the start of the 5-day forecast. But I'm quite excited about what we've got coming up over the weekend. Right, before I get on with today's video, just say about the ads. There's links to articles on all pages. Have a browse widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. This video adds to both pages. They open up the content when you watch them, they'll close back up again. Going to start off with the Central England temperature, because we're halfway through the month now, of course, and we provisionally stand at 4.7, which is an anomaly of half a degree below average. That's provisional up to the 13th, but I would expect very little deviation when that updates later, taking us up to the 14th. We're about halfway through March now. We can say I've had a colder than average first half to the month. These are the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts. So we've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 8,000 feet is there in the atmosphere, where high pressure, low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream running above. These are the mean flow charts for the next week to 10 days, and blue extrapolates to low pressure, red extrapolates to high pressure. So the ECMWF quite clearly is placing a trough to the northeast and the east of us in the next week to 10 days. This takes us up to around the 25th of March, so just heading up towards the Easter period. Got a ridge out in the Atlantic and the jet stream doing something a bit like that. So on the cool side of a jet here, and with a trough of low pressure, it's likely to be unsettled on the ECM solution. However, the GFS is a little bit different, so we don't know quite how much of a northerly influence we're going to get next week. The GFS is a little bit different, having this ridge just out to the west of the country, with the trough there to the east, and it just means it's got more of an anticyclonic influence really, and less of an influence from that trough of low pressure to the east and the northeast. That's still fairly cool as we're running up towards Easter, but it's not the unsettled and cold northerly that we see with the ECMWF. But there's not a great deal in it, to be honest. Now, these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. Red line here is a 30-year temperature average. Bit above average at the moment. So, well, we've got chilly nights at the moment in this area of high pressure, but by day, when the sun comes out, it is quite pleasant and fairly warm. As we get through into weekend, dates on the bottom of the chart, of course, and through into next week, we find the temperatures dipping off a little bit, and it looks like next week's going to be fairly cool, really. The trend line, which is the white line, don't often talk about that, but if you can just make out the white line there, that's the trend of all the ensemble members, if you like. So each one of these coloured lines represents an individual member of the ensemble. The trend line is, the white trend line is the mean of all of those ensemble members, and that is going quite cool through the course of next week as well. Got a completely dry week and into weekend coming up, but then as we get through into next week, the precipitation spikes do come back. It doesn't look a wet week by any means. It's going to be generally modest rainfall amounts, but certainly more rainfall coming up next week compared to this week, which really is completely dry. The temperature anomaly for the coming week, despite that ensemble being a bit above average for the coming week in terms of the upper air temperature, actually the temperature anomaly on the surface is coming out a bit cool, really. Scotland is a bit warmer than average. England and Wales a bit cooler than average. The reason for that is that we've got a easterly wind, particularly over the next 2 or 3 days, that will limit the temperatures down in the south. So generally a little bit cooler than average still. for the coming week. And very dry. This is the precipitation anomaly from the 15th of March to the 23rd. Looking very, very dry with rainfall well below average. So just have a quick look at the generic charts. Here we go for the weekend. Then high pressure still clinging to the country on Saturday. So I think you're going to have basically a dry weekend throughout the weekend. That high pressure gradually drifting to the west on Sunday, but still having enough of an influence to keep most of us dry. There could be a little bit of rain on a weather front coming into the north, but generally very dry through in Sunday. The start of next week sees that high pressure pulling further out into the Atlantic. So the winds now going around the top of that high pressure coming down from the northwest. That could be bringing a weather front with a band of showers. It's not desperately wet, but a little bit more unsettled for the start of next week. And then as we go through the course of next week, this is for Wednesday the 23rd, for example, next Wednesday, and you see the high pressure is pulling out very gradually to the west, allowing these northwesterly winds to come down across the country. That's probably bringing a weather front and a band of rain down through the UK from the northwest. That high pressure stays quite close to us, so this takes us to day 10, which is Friday the 25th of March. And the ridge is still exerting enough of an influence to keep us mostly dry and not all that cold. It is fairly cool with the air coming around the top of that high pressure from the northwest, but it isn't desperately cold. The ECWF, though, is more unsettled and cold, as we saw on the height anomaly chart. So this is how we look on Saturday. Same idea as the GFS for the weekend, with high pressure more or less over top of the country, keeping it mostly dry. Probably bring quite a bit of cloud into the east around that high pressure, but the best sunshine will be in the west. Dry conditions takes into the start of next week, but over time that high pressure is pulling further out into the Atlantic, starting to allow the winds to go round to the northwest. There's probably a weather front coming down across the country here on Monday the 21st of March. And then go through to Tuesday, so this is a week away, and we start to set up a proper northerly wind coming down. So there's a cold front moving through the country, introducing cold air from the north with that high pressure generally sitting to the west of us by that point. And then as we go through next week, it just gets colder really. So this is the Thursday, the 24th, that high pressure's out to west, and there's a trough of low pressure sinking down from the north. So this is how we end up on day 10, which is Friday the 25th of March. It's Good Friday, so just starting the Easter weekend. And this looks really quite cold and unsettled for the start of Easter. We've got a ridge extending through the Atlantic, going up towards Iceland. There's a trough of low pressure sinking down across the country. And, well, follow the isobars back, and you can see that the air with this is originating from a long way north around this area of low pressure. So that looks really quite cold and unsettled to start the Easter weekend. Now, as we just saw, the GFS is not as cold, it's not as unsettled as that for the second half of next week, going up towards the Easter period. So it's a little bit uncertain where things are going as we run up towards Easter. The general idea is that high pressure will sit over the country through the weekend, gradually pull to the west early next week, and it's just going to be a question of how far to the west that high pressure goes. If it goes a long way to the west, as the ECWF wants to do, then we're going to bring down a northerly wind and probably turn it around a trough of low pressure. If high pressure just sticks around Iceland, off the southwest of England, then it's not going to be too bad. We'll be a little bit cool. But mostly dry, and that's what the GFS is going for this morning. So you're going to have to wait and see how things play out for next week. But certainly it's going to be very dry, I think, over the rest of this week and into weekend and into the start of next week as well. Possibly turning colder as we run up towards Easter. I'll have much more on Easter this evening with the Easter updates page, so come back that. Also got month ahead forecast from Terry, so come back that as well. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.